This is the official commentary for Sheep Feeder. I thought I'd get cozy in my new movie chairs, and I'm going to watch the film and kind of narrate and talk about it, what I went through, any sort of experiences or funny things or stories. So, sorry if I'm looking at the TV. I want to make sure that I'm watching everything intently. Right now, it's just doing a little message in the beginning. The commentary part will officially start right once the logo comes up, and I'll start narrating from there. So here is the start of the logo. You can see 92 films now, so that'll be helpful for me to sync later. Let's see, and every 30 minutes I gotta stop this because of the clock, so I gotta be kind of careful. So it starts off with a For Pearl. I don't want to get too deep into who Pearl is or all that. I think people who know. If you've been a part of my channel, I think you know. If you don't, it's just someone that meant a lot to me and passed away. So it was very fitting that the opening scene was a grave scene. That was not intended in the initial cut. But I had kind of rethought about it, and I added that in. And then things happened in my personal life that sort of informed this opening scene. I felt I played this pretty well. I loved that we cut to the wide shot and we really held it. I think a lot of people said it was too slow, but I love the awkward, when you're going to a funeral or a grave or, you want to maintain that realism. And I felt like, let's shock the audience in the opening scene and give them very little cutting or minimalist sort of setup. So, this was originally the opening scene with me with the fingers and then the suicide note. I wanted people to actually think like that they had found a suicide note and been like, oh, concerned. Like I wanted them to almost be concerned because my mental state while making this film was of someone who was, teetering on the edge of just feeling depressed and, I wanted people to actually genuinely think, is this Dan saying this? Or is this Dan the character saying this? So, I feel like, again, I play this pretty well, mostly because, if you can tell, I look really beaten down because I was. I was emotionally very tired, and that scene was very, very much my personal life. So, we have me getting the bottle. I hate that I miss some of the drink, but I think it kind of adds a little bit of a character to the fact that I just don't give a fuck at this point. I wish it would have gotten a perfect pour, but I actually think it might have added something. This scene, I wanted that traditional, like, when someone goes to commit suicide, they have the dress up scene. And I wanted to be, like, past that. Like, we already had gotten to that point, and he already had dressed up, and he was ready to do it. And I felt like it was sort of like shorthand to the audience, like, oh, this guy is going to do it. So if it wasn't clear from the beginning monologue, it was abundantly clear. I'm dressed up. I'm pouring myself some wine. I have these pills. What am I going to do? Let's see. And that is a picture of my wife, I think at like 16 or 17. And I keep that in my wallet ever since I met her. I think she gave it to me pretty long ago. And I've always kept that in my wallet. I always like that picture. And it just always looks cinematic to me, so I felt like it was a great picture to just put in a film. And the fact that the whole film surrounds itself with that picture, I thought was kind of cool. This is the first night scene, scary, spooky scene. And this was shot later into the cut because I knew I needed some more energy. And originally, the ghosts were not very present in the film. It was more just about the sheep coming alive and they were the only ghost presence. And then I decided that there would be an initial ghost that transitions into the sheep ghosts. So I think this was a good change. This whole scene was very, very fun to make. I felt like this one, I was just like sweating and I was getting really, really like burnt out, but I was having a blast during this. This shot right here with me with the knife, I don't think people know. I was like literally butt ass naked filming this because it was really late and I just needed just to get my shot of my hands, and I had like already, like, because like I said, I was sweating. I took all my clothes off and I was literally just butt ass naked filming that shot. So if you can see, there's a little bit too much of my arm in that shot because I wasn't wearing a shirt. It's not the first time. In Chlorine, there was one scene in Chlorine where I get up out of the bed and I am legitimately butt ass naked. I'm not wearing anything. No one really notices it because it kind of pans away. But I wanted there to be a scene of that, and then I ended up kind of cutting it because I was worried about YouTube. But those are funny little trivia if you don't know. So I like this part where let's see, I'll make sure my mic is. I like this part of me waking up. It's very, I don't know, I like the twilight sort of colors that I put in there. And I like the fact that we sort of see the aftermath of the ghost attack. Like, sort of things are still creepy, but like they've dulled down enough that, you know, he's okay. Our character's okay. Yeah, again, me shirtless there. Anytime I can get my shirt off in a film, you know, it's fun. I think what I like is like playing with the idea of like this overweight guy willing to show like so many people who are overweight are afraid of like showing their, you know, their chest or their body, and I think that for me it's kind of like just like a, I don't know. I think it makes the film like a slight bit more awkward, and also just shows the vulnerability of my character. So I think seeing him at his not his best, I think works for this film. So here's me having the panic attack. I mean, and I've used to, you know, a long time ago, I used to get sort of like panic attacks. So this was, I really went to like a place in my head where I felt like I could channel that. I like this shot with the cell phone. I wish we could have played that a little bit better. I wish I would have called Joel Haver. Joel Haver now, who is pretty successful and famous on YouTube, was in our film for a brief blink and you miss it cameo. I'll point it out. But I wanted to make it seem like I was calling him so we knew that he was in the film a little bit before. I wish we could have gotten a voicemail, but that was my stupidity. I never really thought about that until we released the film. The Corona familiar, I think, is the most subtle. I wanted it to be clear that the movie was taking place during Corona, but I didn't want us to say the word Corona ever, because I was like, if we say Corona, that's just going to be very cringy. And so I thought, well, okay, we just show the Corona beer. The audience will supplant that in their mind. This is probably like the first part of the film where it really like takes off. Mimosa. Yeah, the orange mimosa, that was cool. I liked that bottle. I thought it looked really nice. My wife bought it for us to drink, and then I was like, oh, that looks great. That would be perfect for the film. So I wish I would have done a little bit more color in this scene, but, you know, ifs and buts, you know. Yeah, I love how it looks back, and then I just cuts, and then and we cut away. And this is my real desk that I work at and edit all the films on. I love the idea of like giving us like this really deep night scene where like it's almost too dark. Like you almost feel like, oh my gosh, like please get a light in here. Because that's how I lived. So much of Corona and all this stuff was, in the deep dark, searching in Google, like looking up crazy stuff. And, I thought it would be kind of cool to like he's in the middle of the night is like going through and looking for like paranormal investigators. I thought that was really funny. So, definitely one of my favorite scenes in the film. I love the ending of this when we see Joel's face. That's really funny. Joel got a big crack up when he saw that for the first time. And Joel filmed everything that was his stuff because Corona, and we were trying not to get together at that point because things were pretty bad at that stage. This was like right when we were all figuring out what was happening. So Joel actually went to Florida, filmed some stuff, shot some stuff at his family's house in Illinois, which was actually, I think, the last thing he ever got to film there because his family recently moved. So this was like the last send-off stuff from this house, which was cool. I mean, I love seeing Joel, everything that Joel sent me. It was just funny. Joel just sent me all these like little clips, and I was just like, come on, more. And he kept sending me more and more and more until I was just like, oh, just jump on the trampoline, go ride your bike, whatever it takes to make this scene funnier and funnier. And I guess the point of the scene was to show that not everyone in the pandemic lives the same way. Not everyone was like sitting inside and doing everything inside. There were people that were going out, and I wanted that dichotomy of like some people, were locked in their house. Some people went to nature. Some people went to the beach, and some people were, like this guy had all these amenities in his house already. He was living a very full life, despite it's seeming like it would be a tragic thing. He seemed like he was getting along pretty fine, whereas my character was depressed and alone and had nothing to entertain him other than like Google. So yeah, this was fun because we actually had to do the conversation live. So what you're seeing is a real conversation. We didn't like you record your parts, I record my parts. Well, we actually recorded it live so that we actually had really good banter. And I think some people noticed that. I had a couple comments be like they really liked the banter because it was live, it was real. And it was fun. I felt like it felt fun. I felt like we were having a good time trying to come up with ways to work around the problem. The problem being that we couldn't meet up. Little trivia, that's the Death Grips subreddit in the background. It's the only subreddit that I know is consistently got a black background, and I wanted something that had a black background with some color on it, and so I used the Death Grips subreddit a lot in a lot of videos if I want to show my computer. So, big fan of Death Grips, obviously. Yeah, this was just a fun scene, and I think Joel really got to show his comedic chops here. I felt a little like tense while doing my stuff because at this point just like Chlorine, I had done a lot of the alone stuff first, and then I was getting into doing this stuff, which was much scarier. I was like, oh no, I could fuck the whole movie up if I don't act good. But, letting Joel do like the big funny comedic moments allows me to be the straight man in the story. Where like he needs to be over the top, and all I have to do is just not fuck it up. And I think it works. Because I think how many horror comedies have that like one campy character? You know, I felt like we needed that one campy character that, you know. And I think had the situation been different, I would have done more with Joel's character. I would have wanted to bring him actually into the thing. Maybe he gets like eaten by the sheep or something. But at the moment, it was just like, well, we need to use him as the way to explain parts of the story that just don't work. I always wanted to cut the scene a little shorter, but there was just no version where I couldn't go shorter. Like, I don't know. It was originally like a 7 or 8 minute long scene, and I got it down to like 3 minutes or 2 minutes. And I wanted it to be short, but you know, I don't know. It was just a little too long for my taste. I wish I could have cut it down more, but there was just so much vital information and comedic jokes that I needed to both be there to just keep the pace of the film the right way. So I just let the tone kind of I just let the scene dictate what we needed. You know, if I had to go a little longer, I wish we could have cut it down, but you know, not every time do you shoot a scene do you have everything that you want from it. You just got to use what's best. And in this case, it was giving the audience exposition and comedy. This is probably my favorite scene in the film, probably. It's basically he listens to some classic music and he reminisces and goes through all the items that his wife had before she died. And I don't know. I really love this scene. Again, with me with the shirtless. I'm always good with how I frame it, though, I think. I love this shot of me being way too close to the TV and almost being, like, enveloped and, like, enwrapped in this, like, television. I really love the look of that. Because, like, that does encapsulate that late night feeling. And then we have the shots with the rug and then the items. And I thought this was, again, a very romantic way of filming it is, you know, you can show flashbacks, but what's more beautiful than showing someone through the things they loved? You know, and those were real things that my wife had. Those were all real things that meant something to me. So when I was playing the scene, I did get emotional because it was like, this is my wife's real stuff. It's not just some, you know, made up props for a movie. And I think whenever I did do that in the film and I supplanted real things, it made it more realistic. This was like the grossest scene, but like the funniest is me chugging the chocolate milk and then eating the raw hot dogs. I wanted to do something so disgusting. It's like, what do people do when they're alone, you know? Like eating raw hot dogs, drinking chocolate milk. Like that's something like no one would admit to doing. But like I feel like everyone has had that weird moment, whether in the pandemic or whether in just being alone, where they do something stupid. And I just felt like that was a stupid thing to do. I love the red candle when he's praying. I thought that looked very cool. And teases some of the more psychedelic elements of the film later in the story. And the candle blows out as if the ghost comes in the room, and then the very next shot we see this floating, half invisible, half tangible wedding dress, and that was just fun a fun visual to create. And I thought it really had a lot of emotional power to it. So me crying here with the window, going out the window, and I like the Christmas lights being there because like it was clearly past Christmas at this point, but we had left them up just because we liked them, and you know when you were feeling alone, we just left them up. But I felt like it had this kind of like it just entrapped him in this sort of square box within the frame of the lights, and I thought it really showed the prisoner sort of esque quality to the film. Like he's almost a prisoner of this house, and he just feels like he can't go outside. I mean, literally, he could go outside, but I think the point is that was there anything out there for him to go out to do? No, not really. This is the eponymous Joel Haver scene. Yeah, so the funny thing is that Joel was probably at like 3,000 subscribers when we, or no, less than that, probably like 2,000 something. When we first worked on this project, we had done a couple, like, an interview together, and we had talked a few times prior on Facebook, and, we're filmmaking friends. And I had asked him, because we had grown a friendship, to be in the film. And the funny thing is I used the most obscuring shot of Joel here. Because I didn't really want you to get to know who it was. I just wanted you to just kind of be like, oh, it's just this friend who's kind of mysterious. But the funny thing is now Joel is got 500,000 subscribers. So there's something funny that I took probably my biggest cameo ever of any film, and then I shrouded it in darkness, and no one will ever know unless I say it, and most people still don't believe me. It's just really funny. I actually had someone say, oh, this reminds me of Joel Haver. And I was like, oh, he's in the film. And they're like, no, he's not. And I was like, yeah, he is, right here. And they're like, oh. And it was just really funny. So here is the sheep. Oh my gosh. Nothing is more iconic, I think, in the film than the sheep. The sheep were so much fun to work with, and puppet, and I don't know. I think what was just so much fun about the film was that each one had a personality and each one had a vibe to it. I could do different things with each one, so I really liked trying to figure out which sheep would be best for which scenes. And in the start, obviously here they're all lifeless, and I liked the slow build-up we had throughout the film. It's like they're lifeless. They start waking up, but they're only doing small things, and then they start coming alive, and then they start walking around, and then they start watching television, and they keep getting more and more progressively smarter and doing more and more things. And I think that's the one thing I look forward to if I ever do a Sheepland or Sheep Theater 2, whatever ends up being the title. I think with Sheepland, it would be cool to, I've expanded some props. I've gotten more sheep props for Sheepland. And with that, more characters. And my hope is that I can do more characters on one shot. I don't think I ever did more than 4. I don't think I did more than 4 in one clip. But I think I could do maybe 8 to 10 in one clip if I purposely place them, and with having a crew that can change things. Sheepland would definitely be made if I had a crew. I don't want to do it the same way I did this, because I think it would be just the same thing. I don't think I could do much more. I think what I did with this film was as much as I could do with this film. My wife, this is one of the few shots my wife helped me on, where she pans the camera, and I'm watching Die Hard, and the funny thing is I'm holding the sheep that's named Baby in the film, and then we were just randomly filming Die Hard, and he goes, baby, 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 come on, baby, and then we're panning away, and I was just, I don't know, I thought that was just coincidence. It wasn't like I picked that moment. It was literally just on television. I'm like, just film me watching TV, Elizabeth, and I just had her pan. That was one of, I think, 3 scenes she helped me with. So again, I thought watching TV was a big theme throughout the film. I was like, okay, what do people do when they're alone? They just watch TV. Oh, I love when I chuck the sheep across the screen. And then I pick them up right there. I thought it would be funny if I apologized. We just see how crazy I am because I'm petting it lovingly like a dog, and then I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to throw you. It's after I just viciously threw the sheep. I just think it's really funny. Just show my insanity. The holy candles were actually real holy candles provided by my mom. She gave me a ton of holy candles at the start of the pandemic, and my mom's very Catholic, and I come from a very Catholic background. So she gave me all these, just to say good prayers and stuff. But it was those candles that lit the entire film. So I felt like it kind of gave a good aura to everything that happened. It was like sort of like, oh my gosh, every scene we are burning like holy candles. So, whether or not you believe that, I felt like it impacted the way the film came out. The very first scene where we see the sheep actually move, I was like, I really love this because we get this really great wide shot that just, I don't know, just like looks really good. And just you can't really tell how I did it. At least I don't think you can. Some people really hated the red light. I just thought it like meant like danger ahead. Like I just thought like it was this like flare light that we had that we got during all the pandemic stuff, just for like lights and stuff in case the power went out. Because there was a couple power outages that were pretty long in my apartment, and so we needed lights. So we ended up getting those. But I like just the danger ahead, like doot doot doot, like, and I use that I think like 2 or 3 times. And if you don't notice, there's a sheep bow sitting there, and then we pass it up real quick, and then we come back and it's gone. A lot of people wondered how I did that. I'd answer, but I think it's more fun if I don't answer. And I do the effect again. It's not too hard, but I'll let you guys imagine how I did it. So I sort of pan away, and then suddenly the sheep is there. It's just, I don't know. I thought it looked really good. It's a very, very easy to do effect, and it just, I don't know, like makes the production value look like a lot better. Because it's like, how do they do it? And I thought it was good that the first time that my character sees a sheep, it's not like an immediate, like, it's moving. It's like, it's sort of like a subtle movement. Originally, there was going to be more time in between, but I think I cut out any of the fat in between, so we just get to the next scene, and there's another sheep moving, and then this time it's actually moving. So I wanted it to be a gradual effect. This scene was shot in 1080p, and I screwed it up, and I was just too lazy to go back. So I think the scene looks a little subpar in terms of like the visuals. I wish it was in 4K so we could see the night scenes a little bit better, but this little shot was just, it was too good. Like the performance was good enough that I just didn't really think there was anything more. I didn't feel like I needed to go back. But the amount of candle wax that I spilled throughout this film was like ridiculous. Like by the end, the little candle holder was just like drenched with wax. I had to like clean it off every couple weeks to make sure that it didn't look like it was just like filled with candle wax. I think I like probably burned like 10 or 15, maybe 20 candles on this film. This is a cool shot of the sheep moving. This one was just a good old fashioned, just my hand was just underneath the pillow. I wanted a mixture of like just practical puppetry and then like digital puppetry, which is like puppetry minus like mixing out my hand, like masking out my hand. So I like keeping it in tight close-ups because then everyone's like, oh man, this is gonna be lame. He's not even gonna do any like visual effects. It's just like and then you go to this wide shot and then you just see the sheep moving and I'm there. And then everyone's like, wait a minute. How the hell is there someone back there? And I try to deliberately make it so that as many of the sheep scenes as possible, I wanted to make it seem like there's no possible way someone could be hiding behind there. And in this case, it was just me. Like, I'd say 99% of all the sheep effects were done solely by me as I was acting. So I had to act the scenes out, and then I had to film my reactions and the sheep's reactions. And that was a pain in the ass. But it turned out really good. It's just you got to time it right and know what comes where. And a lot of people thought there was like something nefarious, like I was going to do something bad with the sheep here. And I kind of wanted to play on people's expectations there a little bit. Like, am I going to like take advantage of the sheep? Am I going to like make them my slaves? And it's like, no, I just want to like have someone to talk to. But I like the candle being blown out. Sorry. And then I love this. This was inspired by Mishima, which is like the weirdest place of inspiration for a movie like Sheep Theater. But I like those like little miniature sets they did with like the production design, and they like clearly like green screened them or put them like on a mat or something. And so I wanted to recreate that effect to show that like it's just me and him or her, the sheep in the bed, and it's just us like sleeping. Like it's just like I'm at peace in that moment. It's just like, oh man, I have it. Like having a dog. There's nothing worse than when you go to sleep and you're in your house by yourself and there's no one near you. You just feel like there's something off, especially if there's a ghost in this case. So I wanted to feel like, when you have your dog and your dog is at home, there's a certain amount of just peace that just comes over you. You can dream. And that's why that shot was achieved the way it was. Because I was like, I want the character to feel like he can dream again. And then we watch my wife's actual favorite movie, Back to the Future. And almost all the stories and anecdotes in the film are real. So anything I say about my wife is true 99% of the time. There might be one or two things that are like fabricated or like stretched, but this is true. It is her favorite film. Because I was making this film for her in a way. I wanted to be like, hey, I miss you. And so we have this scene, the Hard to Remember music video, which I did shoot. It is a real music video. You can find it, and it actually did pretty well. What's interesting is that is a park. I like to call it Pearl Park. And that's where I got engaged with my wife. I got engaged to my wife there, and it's a park that we've always gone to. And I wanted to tee up the fact that the park was important, so I linger on that shot there. But I don't really want to explain why, other than that it was a place I got engaged. And I say that in the film. And at the beginning of the film, we see the grave. And I wanted I at some point realized that the ending of the film would be at Pearl Park. It would be at the place we got engaged, because I was like, okay, well, he doesn't like the grave. He doesn't feel like it truly represents her. Doesn't feel like he really put her to rest. But if he puts her to rest at the park where they got engaged in the film, there's a certain amount of finality that he can put there, but he hasn't gotten to that conclusion yet. This scene was so much fun to shoot. I don't know why. This one just really felt campy, and I loved when this sheep had like this little bell on it that, like, I don't know, it's just really funny when I shook it left and right. It just like looked hilarious. So this was just one of the later scenes I shot, but it was really fun. So we have. This is probably one of the more fabricated. Like, I think my wife does like rainstorms, but I think I like overstate it. I don't think it's like as much as I say she does in this part. I just wanted a touching anecdote about, like, that little stoop there, because it still feels like it's so far away. It still feels like we're in prison. Like that's the what's funny is that the film, while we really have the ability to literally walk outside, and I actually even filmed 2 or 3 scenes with the sheep outside. I had to nix those because I needed it to feel like we were in prison. I wanted us to feel like we were legitimately in a prison and that we could not leave. I felt like that was the only way we would truly understand my character's motivation and sadness. Is that, you know, we really need to see it by living it. Yeah, and I almost burned the picture. I came very close to burning that picture, and that would have really ruined the movie. But I was careful, so I tried not to burn it. I probably could have gotten another one, but not the same one. I liked the crying in the darkness. Some people have critiqued that, but I really felt like true emotions don't always come out during like these bright, high-key moments where you can see someone crying. Sometimes they're dark and shrouded and hidden behind a bunch of things. So, okay, we have Baby the sheep looking at the candle, and now Sunny is walking up right now. This was fun because it was just funny. I don't know. To have 3 sheep communicating, and it's like we almost hit this like Lucas. Remember those Ewok movies? I there was this tangibility of like, am I making like a fucking nightmare movie like that's terrible? And I don't know. There's something so funny about like these inanimate objects communicating, and there's no me in the shot. That's a shirt from the band Death Grips again, from MC Ride. It's a good shirt. I love this. This is the compositing here is awesome. Just all of it. I think I did a really great job, and it really sells the group nature. And then we also have me reading the book to the sheep, and I thought again I needed to have all of them in one shot moving, or you would not believe it. With 4 of them moving, and there's actually a mistake. If you look in the background, the cables are all screwed up. I never noticed that, but I feel like it's so subtle. Sheep Go to Sleep is that's just a funny book to read to sheep. I just thought it was hilarious. So, and I purposely picked this game, Phase 10, because my wife loves it. And what's funny is that the game rules are super duper complex, to me at least. She says they're not, but I just don't really understand the game rules too well. And so I thought it'd be funny for me to try to explain these rules to like something that is not that intelligent. This sheep is clearly like got a very small intelligence. And I'm trying to explain like all these rules, and then I'm like, do you just understand like basic numbers? And it's like, huh? And then you're like, oh, okay. So it's pretty, it just shows you the smartness of the sheep. And this comes back around. So I try to have things come back around if I could, and this was one of those moments where it plays hide and seek and then it hides on top of the door, and that could have just been a throwaway moment, but I remembered to put that in there early so that when later on, when it's on the door, you know, there's a precedent. This is one of the few scenes that were done, sheep effects that were done with someone else. That was with Joel Dick. Joel came over and helped me with that shot. Here we are in the kitchen looking with Larry, the sheep. Larry was probably the most fun to puppet because of his long neck, so there was a lot of flexibility. We actually filmed, I filmed like a couple Larrys. I think I filmed like 3 or 4. I ended up cutting a lot of them because they all kind of were the same thing. It was just like he likes food. And I was like, well, one scene's enough. I don't need like 3 of them. And the therapist scene I thought was funny. There was originally another therapist scene earlier in the film, but I cut it because the audio was abysmal. So I like this scene because we actually show the sheep to Joel, and we do this cool effect where we have the sheep moving, and then we also have my hand moving over the sheep, which is something I rarely did, but I wanted it to look good. I wanted it to look like, man, this sheep is so alive that I can like put my hand in front of it and you can still believe it's real. Joel was just cracking up the whole time. When we were doing this, he was just laughing as I was like putting the sheep and like having it hit the phone. He was just like, this is just insane. The way Joel acts, Joel was able to take this stuff so seriously and make it so comedic at the same time. And this was the last thing I filmed for the whole film. I filmed this the night before I uploaded it to YouTube. So that was a couple days before it went on YouTube. I think it was like 4 or 5. But I basically filmed this and then I put it in, I rendered it, and I uploaded the film to YouTube the next day. It was really, really fun to film this because I needed to like something that was still spooky. And I felt like, oh man, there's not enough spooky stuff in the film. So I was like, well, what's spooky? Okay, random dishes break, and then I have to like look around, you know. So this is my Real Criterion collection. So that was fun to incorporate. I thought it would be funny if I watched this 6-hour. The film I'm talking about is like a 6-hour long film, or 5-hour, and I'm such a cinephile, but I thought it'd be funny if I was really bored by the film and then the sheep loved it, and it was just really funny that like it was so enamored with this like 6-hour long crazy epic film, and I'm just like bored out of my skull. And I wanted me to be using the lighter because I wanted it to make it clear, like I'm not using any strings, I'm not using my hands. I wanted you to be clear, like, hey, my hands are occupied. I can't be doing this without visual effects. When it says somewhere in Colorado. So Joel actually went to Colorado as well to see some of his family members. So there was something really funny about the fact that Joel was like this jet setter during all this. He was going to Florida. He went to Colorado. And I just stayed where I was the whole time. So it was funny, like, I was like, Joel, you're adding so much production value to the film because, like, every time you're going somewhere, you know, it's another location that you needed to, you know, we needed to put in the film. So anytime Joel basically went somewhere, I was like, just film it. Please film it. And it's amazing that Joel got this clean of, he got pretty clean audio considering what was going on, which was basically he just had an H4n Zoom recorder, and that's not that great for audio, but like he somehow made it work. And I don't think it stands out as the worst audio in the film. So I think that as long as it didn't stand out, I think we were all good. The spectrometer is literally just an old film light from a Super 8mm camera with a sock on top of it. And I thought I wanted it to look like something that was literally made for like $2. Because like I wanted people to be like, okay, the supernatural and the ghost hunter stuff is clearly just for fun. It's just like a fun part to the plot. The sheep are just a fun part to the plot. It's not you're not supposed to make this like some serious drama that like, you know, and there's dramatic elements, and I think at some parts you should feel the drama. But I wanted the people to ultimately come away like this is a movie about like basically like talking sheep ghost puppets that haunt me and try to kill me, but then I learn the meaning of life and death and getting over stuff. You know, it's all mixed in there. So I wanted the props, specifically the spectrometer, to look just like, you know, $2, like I just literally just threw it together. Could I have like painted like, you know, like a prop and made it look really good? I think the sound effects sell it more than any high quality prop would have ever looked like. This was probably the best scene in the film, like if we're talking about like suspense. I think one of the most negative reviews said this was like the best scene in the film, which was it was conveniently one of the last things I shot because I needed more scares in the film again. So I was like, well, I need to have a scene with the sheep and me trying to investigate the horror component of the story. And I thought it was funny that like I fell asleep and then the sheep was the one that found out what was going on, and then the spectrometer goes off, and then I'm talking to it, but like how am I supposed to interpret this? So it's just like telling me a bunch of sheep noises. I'm like, clearly I've bonded enough with it that I know what it's saying. And this was fun to also film. I would say this is the most economical scene in the film. Like I was very economical with how I filmed it. This was one of the last things I shot as well with the candy bar. I'm eating the ice cream bar, and I thought it'd be funny. Like my character feels like he's like worked up. He needs something to eat. He needs to chill out because like man, I just done so much. When in all reality, he like slept, ran over there, and then that's it. But I felt like, during all this time, that would probably seem like a lot to this character, having most of it been just chilling around. This scene is just pure lunacy, and applies no real logic. So we have the sheep, they have a blanket. I come back 20 seconds later, and now they have a third sheep. And some people thought this was weird. I just thought it was funny. Like, okay, like the sheep have now made a third sheep. Like, there's no logic to it. Just like it's again trying to tell the audience like it's absurd. Like, go with it. Like, if you don't like the story after that part, I feel like you're just not the person who the story is made for. If you notice in the background, you can see all the other sheep sleeping in the very, very way back. They are literally like just laying there. But like that was not intentional, but I just called that the sheep sleeping because I left them there by accident. And I originally was going to refilm the scene, but I was like, why? They're sleeping. Like it doesn't really matter. This one was the hardest to puppet because he's so small. This little bastard he was a pain in the ass. Every time I had to film him, I was just like rolling my eyes because it was like, and I think that made that his character. It's like I just hated this one because he was a pain in the ass. He was hard to film. There was no good way to make him look like he was actually moving. It was just very hard to do. This was fun because I wanted to show that the sheep have superpowers besides just being alive. That they're still supernatural. They can disappear. They can reappear. We see one of them earlier can jump. There's specific powers that they have that are not just limited to just them being talking sheep. So I do think it's funny that the spectrometer is never used again in the film. Like he's almost just like done with it. And obviously that's more of a mistake than an intentional thing. But I just think it's funny that like he gives up on the spectrometer ever really working again. He just is like, well, I'm just gonna have the sheep just tell me if anything happens, because the one time that it happened, ultimately it was the sheep that told them what was going on, not the spectrometer. They got to it first. I think I did a good job of doing the photography of the night scenes. Like I think that like they really feel like tired night scenes. We have now Ronnie laying down. This is really fun stuff because I thought it was just funny, like making him look so sleepy. He just looks so sleepy in that blanket. I think you can actually even see my hand a little bit if you look close enough. But that's okay. I don't think that there's too much. I mean, it might just be the blanket. Even if you can see my hand, I think like anyone is willing to forgive that for a movie like this, where it's just so off the cuff. Like if anyone comes up to me and says, like you need to rethink, you're filming me. This was not good, blah, blah, blah. I've heard a lot of, negative reviews and stuff, and a lot of people who are just butthurt that they couldn't make something themselves during the pandemic. And if I'm being honest, I think it comes down to just the fact that I went out and made it, and it was something fun. I could have went out and made something that was some, like, dirge, like terrible, like coronavirus, is taking over the world. But, like, I made something that was fun. I just made something that was enjoyable. There's, like, differing opinions. Some people really love the mask, or the dark figure. Some people love him, and some people absolutely hate him. Like, some people are like, oh, he's not scary at all. And then I've had people say, oh, freaky. Like, it really freaked him out. So, I don't know. I like the mask figure. I think he looks really cool. He's definitely it's definitely a tribute to Uncle Bon Me. If you've ever heard of that film, he kind of looks similar. Again, with the necklace, I wanted the necklace to be, what does the necklace symbolize? That's up to the audience. But it means something, What does it mean? That's what I wanted there to be iconography, things that were specific to this film, that were like the necklace, the picture, the sheep, that were specifically tailored for the film and have specific things and meanings to them. And I think I did a decent job at that. This is one of the earliest things. If you notice, if you look really closely, you can see my hairline kind of changes on my beard and on my hair. But I feel like because the film is so fast paced in terms of like just one scene to the next, and you don't get a ton of time to like inspect the frame because you're just focusing on what's happening within the frame. You are allowed sort of this freedom to just, not even really question the hair length and all that stuff. This was a fun montage with the Golden Brown song, because the song is about shooting up heroin, if I think that's what it's really about. And while I don't think I intentionally thought of that when I was making the film, I think there was something really interesting about, like, this almost feeling like a drug-induced high. Like, he's just around all these, like, creatures. And they're all fake, but, like, they feel real to him. And it's like, what is that? Is that his own, is he going crazy? Or is this really happening to him? And I didn't want to make this like a Shutter Island type thing where it's like it's all in his head. But I think there's certain moments in this film where it questions, like, is this really happening, or is this just this guy going crazy in the moment? And I hope that people, looked at it from all angles, Maybe not all angles are correct, but, look at all the angles. And there was moments where I left the sheep still, and then I moved them halfway through the scene to give also the viewer like this sort of like, are the sheep moving, or are they only moving in his head? So it starts off this shot, the sheep is not moving, and then the sheep is moving. It's like, okay, what is that? Again, here is the only other scene. Joel Haver is tied up and in his underwear, which is hilarious. Just when he sent it to me, it just made me laugh. He's tied up again. So the only two scenes Joel Haver is in, he talks in one, but he's obscured. In the other one, he's got his face covered up and he's in his underwear. I don't think anyone would suspect that's Joel Haver unless they like know his voice by heart. So I really appreciate that Joel was willing to do this movie. I mean, basically just on like spec. I just was like, hey, do you want to just do this because it's fun? And then he was like, yeah, sure. And I'm like, you just want to just like, it's like a one scene. And he just filmed it, recorded it, and sent it to me. And I think it was, I'm infinitely grateful for the work that he did on the film. So me being kidnapped, you know, put in hand like closed handcuffs. It's just funny. The fact that the sheep that have no opposable thumbs can do this is just, I don't know, makes me laugh. So this is where the film gets dreamy, you know, gets, as Lynch would say, you know, I want to have time to get dreamy. This was just fun. I filmed this way early in the film, and I had no idea what the fuck this was going to be. So, like, this was filmed for a completely different scene when it started. And then, very close to the end of the production, I was like, oh, well, that would be really, really awesome if I, like, use that at the end of the film for when things get all weird. And then I was like, yeah, that's perfect. That's exactly where it needs to be. I mean, and I think everyone has told me that this scene was just really weird and they liked it. I just had so much fun filming this stuff. Because you really don't even know, like, at this point, like, you don't even know where my sanity is. It's just like, it's gone. My character is, you know, one minute he's dreaming, the next minute he's seeing puppet sheep attacking him. The next minute, he's drugged, you know. I also like that he wakes up and conveniently the green sheep is gone. Because, like, again, is this in his head? Is it just convenient for his sake of convenience? Or is it actually what's happening? There's enough little questions that allow the audience to supplant their own ideas. I'm very much the type of guy who's like, what you see is what you get. But I like the fact that I left it open for people to be like, no, that's not what happened. This scene was very hard to film and do because, like, I was just really exhausted. And I had to do this, like, really long monologue where I'm emotional, I'm calling Joel. It needs to be low light, but I need it to be like high key enough that it works, you know, that it's not too dark. And I think this is another one of those scenes where it ended up only shooting in 1080p. And so I think you can see the sort of the weakness of my cinematography comes out in this scene. But I don't know. I think the scene ultimately works. I think, like, I could have filmed this more cinematically. But that's what happens when you're a director, cinematographer, actor, editor, VFX, artist, producer. Something has to give. At some point, something has to give. And at this moment, at this point, what had to give was the cinematography. I had to focus on the performance in that moment and the direction of the film over, like, trying to get the greatest, most cinematic shot, because it just wasn't going to work. There's only so many, and what was really hard about the film that I don't think a lot of people maybe gave me enough credit for, and I'm not saying this like, oh, boo-hoo, but this is like a very small apartment. It's only 2 bedrooms, a main living room, and a kitchen. That's not a lot of room for a 90-minute film, or a, 76 or something like that minute film. And yet, I feel like I kept it interesting. I feel like for 99% of this, it doesn't feel like I retread. Like, I feel like each scene, I try to film it in a unique way. And I don't know. I think it succeeded. I think overall, if you look at this, I think you wouldn't feel like, oh man, this guy was confined by his location. I think most people are like, wow, he did a lot with that location. I think it's the least cinematic location I've had to work with on a film. And unfortunately, that wasn't, the easiest thing to work with. But I made it work. I love the fact I filmed that during a blackout. So there was a blackout at our apartment. So basically, there was a flood, and we lost all power. And so the lights in the hallway were completely out. So I put some candles in the hallway, and I filmed that real quick because there's no way to film that without that being completely blacked out. So that was fun. And then all this stuff at the end was all kind of a blur. I was just getting so worked up filming all this, and this is the only other scene that really uses anyone for puppetry, and that's Elizabeth using a like little grabber. It's like for like a, I think it's for like an iPhone or something, like a selfie stick or something like that, and using it to puppet the sheep. Some people have asked me, because there was like a bet that I had for like the 2 scenes that, that were done with puppetry. If you can guess them, I'd give you like a certain amount of money. And no one ended up getting it. One person got close. This part was scary. I reused sound effects I did for a short film to do the monster sounds because I did them so well a long time ago. I was like, well, why not just use the same ones? Like, no one's seen that short film. And tangentially, the monster from this film was similar to the monster from that other film that I did. This is probably the best visual effect in the whole film, which is done completely in camera, with the exception I had to mask the sheep in. But it's just it's basically just split screen photography. If I had 2 people working on this film at the same time, I wouldn't have had to do visual effects for that. But I needed 2 people. I needed to do it all myself, so I had to composite them together. All the sheep. I think this is really where all my work really came together. I think most people can admit, even if they didn't like the film, like, wow, this is pretty crazy. This guy did all this effects all by himself. When he was getting candle wax on him, he was, doing everything. Like, I was really putting it on the line, trying to make it look as cool as possible. I wanted this to be my Evil Dead in a apartment, So my crying scene, some people, have disagreed or disliked my crying, but I think I did pretty good. And, the hand scene has always been like one of my favorite, because it's like, how is he going to get out of the situation? It's like, okay, well, we needed like sort of like a Deus Ex Machina, which is mostly considered negative, but I think we earned it. He had gone through so much torture in his like life, in this like last few months of his life. I think we sort of earned the fact that like a miracle needs to happen. And I felt like that kind of went with the themes of faith in the film. That just the mere fact that he was working towards, trying to figure out his problems with, losing his wife, was enough for him to get that miracle, to let go of those demons. So it was definitely one of my favorite scenes of the film. I almost ended the film right there. I had half a mind to be like, let's just end it there and we won't really know what happens. But I felt like that was too ambiguous. It was just too ambiguous. I was like, well, we need to have one more scene. And this is where I came up with the whole going to Pearl Park. Going to Pearl Park, and this little quick little scene where I show the sheep, my wedding, the book from our wedding day. I thought, it would be cool to show like real moments in my real life to again make this relationship more realistic and make it seem like, oh, this was really something that really was lived in. So we then have, the sheep is kind of like giving some little commentary. And then I wanted to have that final moment at Pearl Park, because it was like, okay, we need to finally go outside. That was the number one reason that motivated us to do this final scene was, and I say us, I say really me. My wife was there for this scene, but I think she mostly just kind of chilled out. This scene was absolutely torturous to film. It was like 100 and some degrees. I actually think I got dehydrated, so much so that I was like actually a little like concerned I was going to pass out. But It looks effortlessly on in the film. It looks like I was just enjoying myself. I was in complete misery when I was filming this. I can guarantee you that. This scene, it was fun. I really wanted this to be like the last thing I shot, and it ended up not being. It ended up being more like in the middle of what I ended up shooting. But I don't know. This was a great bookend. Like I got through this stuff, and I was like, well, here we are. You know, the last shot of the film being me burying the necklace. I just felt full circle with the funeral the funeral the grave scene at the very beginning. It's like, okay, well now he's come to terms with it and he can finally put her to rest. He puts her in the ground. The necklace, you know, his grief, he can put it away. And that's Sheep Theater, directed by Daniel Watts. That's me. I mean, I think it was also fun. The credits were, it was like, well, what do I do? It's just by me. Do I just have me? So I was like, okay, what if I have all the sheep's names come up? So Daniel Watts is himself, you know. Again, I could have given myself a name like Carl, but I was like, well, my name's Daniel Watts. It'll just be Daniel Watts. Bo is Bo. So they all have their little names. I thought it was a quirky way to like extend and draw out the credits a little bit. I could have just said, a film made by Dan, and then just ended it, but I think like the film deserved more than that. Ronnie is Ronnie. The only thing that was sad is that I had 2 renders of this, and I had to get the film out by a specific day. I had announced it, and I had my wife in the credits, and then also gave her a dedication at the end. And her name ended up not being in the credits of the version I had to post because it was the only version that was in 4K. So she actually doesn't get an official credit, which kind of sucks, but we give her a dedication at the end, so I figured most people could understand. But the story continues in Sheepland, perhaps. I know a lot of people are asking questions about it. And Sheep Theater, picture of my wife, dedicated to my lovely wife. She is very much alive. I think it would have been nice if I could have given her the full credit, but it was one of those things where it was either get the film out on time when everyone wanted it, or potentially, piss everyone off, and then no one wants to watch the film. So I figured the dedication was enough. And we have the final scene, which is I filmed this little like YouTube clip, and that's where I came up with the idea of the title for Sheep Theater. It was like, okay, he says it. It's like this YouTube channel he creates, where he's talking about and like sort of like going into the lives of the sheep and stuff. But it never really fit in the film. It was just like, I don't know, it was just like this weird like off-end clip that I had. And I was like, well, what do I do with this? I'm like, I just can't have this random scene where he's like doing YouTube in the middle of the film. It'd just be weird. And then my friend Cody was willing and gracious enough to, actually film this little clip of him watching the film, watching the little clip from the film, and then he commentates this like end clip, and he plays this character named Skeptic Carl, basically a big fuck you to everyone who was hating on the film, everyone who was like being a hater or didn't like the film. It's okay, you don't have to like it, but there was a lot of people on my previous film that were kind of being jerks about stuff, so I thought it'd be kind of funny to make a little critique of those people. Nothing wrong with making a little poke a little jab at those type of people. So that's basically it. The film is about to end. I appreciate you stopping in for the commentary. I hope to do another commentary for Chlorine as soon as possible. And I think this new setup will be really fun for like doing movie wagers and stuff of that kind, where I'm doing like movie wagers or anything of that sort. So my hope is that you guys enjoyed this and you got something out of it. So thank you so much, and have a very, very good day. It's about to wrap up in a few seconds here. I will just say it's done when it's done. I could say stuff, but at this point, I imagine most people aren't here. And it's done. Thank you, Cody. We really appreciate you. And everyone, have a great day. Peace out.